No one would give the eulogy at my cruel grandmother's funeral, so I volunteered and told a beautiful, fake story about her. After the service, her lawyer approached me with a smile. "Congratulations," he said. "You just passed her final test. Before the story, let's do this. Comment your age and be sure to subscribe for more amazing stories every day." Now, let's head back to that awkward funeral parlor. I was sitting in the front row of Riverside Funeral Home, watching my family squirm in their seats like children who'd been called to the principal's office. We were all there for the same reason, to bury my grandmother, Evelyn Walsh. But none of us wanted to be there, and we certainly didn't want to pretend we were sad about it. Evelyn Walsh had died at 84. To be completely honest, most of the family was relieved. By any measure, she had been a difficult woman. Not just difficult, but cruel. For as long as I could remember, she had wielded her wealth and her sharp tongue like weapons, cutting down anyone who dared to disappoint her, which was pretty much everyone. I'm 28 years old, a high school English teacher, and I had always been what you might call the forgotten grandson. While my cousins competed for Grandma Evelyn's attention and approval, and more importantly, her money, I had kept my distance. It wasn't because I was above the family drama, but because I had learned early on that getting close to Evelyn Walsh meant getting hurt. She had a gift for finding your weakest spot and pressing on it until you broke. My cousin Derek, who had struggled with his weight as a teenager, still flinched when anyone mentioned food because of the comments she used to make. My cousin Sarah had given up her dream of becoming an artist after Evelyn spent an entire Christmas dinner explaining why creative types always ended up poor and miserable. But here's the thing about Evelyn. Her cruelty wasn't random. It was strategic. She would dangle the promise of inheritance like a carrot, making it clear that her considerable fortune would go to whoever pleased her most. This had turned family gatherings into gladiatorial contests, with siblings and cousins competing to see who could earn her favor. I had opted out of that game years ago. While everyone else was performing for her approval, I would simply visit. Not often, maybe once every few months, but I would stop by her massive house on Elm Street, sit in her formal living room, and listen to her complain about the family, the neighbors, the state of the world. I wasn't afraid to gently challenge her. I listened and I talked back. She said to me once, "You're the only one who doesn't want anything from me." I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or an accusation. Now she was gone, and we were all gathered in this sterile funeral home, staring at a casket surrounded by flowers that no one had sent out of love. The funeral director, a nervous man named Mr. Peterson, had been trying for 20 minutes to find someone willing to give the eulogy. "Surely someone would like to share some memories of Mrs. Walsh?" he asked, his voice growing more desperate with each repetition. The silence was deafening. My Uncle Robert, Evelyn's eldest son, was studying his shoes with intense concentration. My Aunt Margaret was checking her phone. My cousins were all suddenly fascinated by the floral arrangements. "Anyone?" Mr. Peterson tried again. "A favorite memory, perhaps? A lesson she taught you?" More silence. I could see people in the small congregation, mostly elderly neighbors and a few people from her church, beginning to whisper among themselves. This was becoming a spectacle. "She was a very strong woman," my Uncle Robert finally offered weakly. "Strong-willed," my Aunt Margaret corrected, and even that felt generous. Mr. Peterson looked around the room with growing panic. In 30 years of conducting funerals, he had probably never encountered a situation where literally no one wanted to say anything nice about the deceased. That's when I stood up. "I'll do it," I said. Every head in the room turned to look at me. My Uncle Robert's eyebrows shot up in surprise. My cousin Derek actually looked concerned, as if I might be having a breakdown. "Kevin," my Aunt Margaret whispered, "you don't have to. It's fine," I said, walking toward the podium. "Someone should say something." As I stood behind the lectern, looking out at the small crowd of people who had come to see Evelyn Walsh buried, I realized I had absolutely no idea what I was going to say. I couldn't tell the truth, that she'd been a bitter, manipulative woman who had made most of our lives miserable. But I also couldn't just stand there in silence. So I did something I had never done before in my life. I lied, completely, thoroughly, and with absolute conviction. My grandmother, Evelyn Walsh, was a woman who taught me that love comes in many forms. I saw my cousin Sarah's eyes widen in surprise. Love from Grandma Evelyn? When I was young, she would invite me into her kitchen on Sunday afternoons. She would teach me to make her famous apple pie, the one with the secret ingredient she never wrote down in any recipe book. This was completely false. Evelyn had never cooked anything in my presence. She would tell me stories about her childhood during the Depression, about how her family always found ways to help their neighbors who had even less. Also false. Evelyn had grown up wealthy. She taught me that true strength isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, I said, looking directly at my Uncle Robert. It's about being the person others can count on when everything falls apart. I was making this up as I went along, but something strange was happening. As I spoke, I could see people in the congregation beginning to nod. Some of the elderly neighbors were wiping their eyes. Even my own family members looked moved by this fictional version of Evelyn Walsh. She had a way of seeing potential in people that they couldn't see in themselves. She would push you, yes, but only because she believed you were capable of more than you thought possible. This was perhaps the biggest lie of all. I remember the last conversation I had with her. She told me that the most important thing in life wasn't what you accumulated, but what you gave away. She said that kindness was the only currency that mattered, and that the richest people were the ones who made others feel valued. The irony of attributing these words to Evelyn Walsh was not lost on me. But as I looked out at the faces in the congregation, I could see that my words were having an effect. My grandmother wasn't always easy to understand, I said, and this finally was the truth. She had high standards, and she didn't suffer fools gladly. But underneath that tough exterior was a woman who cared deeply about her family and her community. I paused, looking down at the casket. She taught me that sometimes the people who are hardest to love are the ones who need love the most, I concluded, and that true character is revealed not in how we treat those who can help us, but in how we treat those who can't. I stepped back from the podium to a round of applause that felt surreal. People were actually clapping for a eulogy about Evelyn Walsh. My Aunt Margaret was crying. My cousin Derek was nodding approvingly. Even the funeral director looked relieved. As I returned to my seat, I felt a mixture of guilt and satisfaction. I had lied through my teeth, but I had also given Evelyn a dignity in death that she had rarely shown in life. The rest of the service passed in a blur. We sang hymns, listened to prayers, and watched as her casket was carried out. At the graveside, as we watched Evelyn Walsh being lowered into the ground, I felt a strange sense of closure. Not because I was sad to see her go, but because I had managed to give her something she had never given anyone else: the benefit of the doubt. After the burial, as people were beginning to disperse, a man in an expensive suit approached me. He was probably in his 60s with silver hair and a confident bearing. "Mr. Walsh," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Richard Hartwell, your grandmother's attorney." "Oh," I said, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you. That was a beautiful eulogy," he said, and there was something in his expression that I couldn't quite read. Very creative. I felt a flush of embarrassment. "Thank you. I just thought someone should say something nice about her." "Indeed," Mr. Hartwell said, his smile growing wider. "In fact, I was hoping we could speak privately. There are some matters regarding your grandmother's estate that I need to discuss with you." "With me?" I was confused. "I think you want to talk to my Uncle Robert. He's the eldest." "Actually," Mr. Hartwell said, "I want to talk to you, specifically you. Could you come to my office tomorrow morning? Say 10 o'clock. I agreed, though I couldn't imagine what her lawyer could possibly want with me. As far as I knew, I wasn't mentioned in her will. That night, I lay in bed replaying the day's events. I felt guilty about the deception, but I also felt a strange sense of peace. For once, I had chosen kindness over honesty, compassion over accuracy. The next morning, I arrived at Hartwell and Associates. The office was everything you'd expect. Mahogany furniture, leather-bound books, and an atmosphere of quiet authority. Mr. Hartwell greeted me and gestured for me to sit. "Mr. Walsh," he began, "I have some rather unusual news for you." Your grandmother has left you her entire estate. I stared at him. I'm sorry, what? Her entire estate? He repeated. The house, the investments, the bank accounts, everything. It's worth approximately $2 million. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. That's impossible. She barely tolerated me. My Uncle Robert, my Aunt Margaret. They're the ones. Yes, Mr. Hartwell interrupted. She was very aware of that. In fact, she was counting on it. I don't understand. Mr. Hartwell leaned back in his chair. Your grandmother was a very complicated woman, Mr. Walsh. She spent the last 20 years of her life conducting what she called character tests on her family members. She wanted to see who would love her, or at least treat her with basic human decency, without the promise of financial reward. I thought about all those awkward Sunday afternoon visits. Most of your family members, Mr. Hartwell continued, only showed interest when they wanted something. They saw her as a bank, not as a person. But I never asked her for anything, I said. Exactly, Mr. Hartwell smiled. You were the only one who visited her regularly without wanting anything in return. But she wasn't a nice person, I said. No, Mr. Hartwell agreed. She wasn't. She was difficult, demanding, and often cruel. But she was also testing everyone around her. He pulled out a sealed envelope with my name on it in Evelyn's handwriting. She left this for you, with instructions that it should only be given to you if you passed her final test. What was the final test? The eulogy, Mr. Hartwell said. I took the envelope with trembling hands. So she knew I would lie? She hoped you would choose to see the best in her, even if that best was imaginary. I opened the envelope. The letter read, My dear Kevin, if you are reading this, it means you have passed my final test. It means you chose to speak kindly of me at my funeral, even though I gave you very little reason to do so during my lifetime. I know I was not an easy woman to love. I was often cruel, manipulative, and demanding, but I want you to understand why. I learned that people would take advantage of kindness, so I built walls around my heart and tested everyone. I tested your Uncle Robert. He failed. I tested your Aunt Margaret. She failed. I tested your cousins. They all failed. But you, Kevin, you never failed. You visited me even when I was difficult. You treated me with basic human respect. I noticed all of it. The money I'm leaving you is not a reward for being my favorite grandson. It's a recognition of your character. You showed me compassion when I didn't deserve it, and that is the rarest and most valuable quality a person can possess. Thank you for seeing something good in me even when it wasn't there. With all my love and respect, your grandmother, Evelyn. I read the letter twice, tears blurring my vision. She wasn't testing you to be cruel, Mr. Hartwell said quietly. She was testing you because she had been hurt so many times that she had forgotten how to trust. But she never forgot how to recognize genuine kindness when she saw it. I left the lawyer's office that day with a check for $2 million and a completely different understanding of my grandmother. Over the next few weeks, I found myself thinking differently about our relationship. Those awkward visits suddenly took on new meaning. I hadn't been wasting my time. I was providing companionship to someone who was desperately lonely. 6 months later, while cleaning out her house, I found a scrapbook hidden in her closet. It was filled with report cards, clippings from when I won a teaching award, a program for my college graduation, and photos of me with little handwritten captions. Kevin at Christmas, age 12. Kevin's first day of high school. Kevin helping with dishes. Such a good boy. She had been paying attention all along. On the last page was a photo I had never seen. Me and Evelyn at my high school graduation party, sitting on her back porch. I was showing her something on my phone, and she was leaning in close, actually smiling. Underneath, she had written, My dear Kevin, the only one who sees me as a person, not a bank account. I hope someday he understands how much his visits mean to me. I sat on the floor and cried. Not for the bitter woman I thought she was, but for the lonely, frightened woman she had actually been. The eulogy I had given suddenly didn't feel like lies anymore. They felt like the truth about who she could have been. A year later, I was still teaching. I had learned that kindness doesn't require a reason, that compassion doesn't need to be earned, and that sometimes the most difficult people are the ones who need love the most. I never told my family about the inheritance. Let them think the money went to charity. Sometimes I still visit her grave. I tell her about my students, about the small acts of kindness I try to perform in her memory. And sometimes I swear I can hear her voice, warm and grateful. Thank you for seeing something good in me, even when it wasn't there. The truth is, it was there all along. It was just hidden behind years of hurt and fear. My grandmother's greatest gift to me wasn't the money. It was the understanding that everyone, even the most difficult people, deserves to be seen with compassionate eyes. Her final test was about whether I could choose love over judgment, kindness over honesty, hope over cynicism. And in passing that test, I didn't just inherit her money. I inherited her wisdom, her pain, and ultimately her capacity for love. Evelyn Walsh had been a master teacher after all. She had just been teaching a lesson that took me 28 years to understand. What an absolutely incredible story about the power of compassion and the complexity of human nature. Evelyn's final test shows us that sometimes the people who seem the most unlovable are the ones who need love the most. What do you think about Kevin's choice to lie in the eulogy? Have you ever discovered that someone difficult in your life was actually testing your character? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were moved by this powerful story of hidden love and unexpected inheritance, please show your support by hitting that like button and be sure to subscribe for more amazing stories every day. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.